And
here we go. And away we go. Hey, welcome to the Energy Realities podcast. I'm David Blackman. I'll be your moderator, at least at the beginning today. Tammy appears to be having a problem getting on, and it was her week to be the moderator. But since we're talking about elections, I volunteered to step in. With me today, of course, is the incomparable Irina Slav, the great energy analyst and writer and narrator of her Substacks uh, uh, articles. And she has a fantastic one today that you guys got to go read. Irina Slav on energy. It's fantastic. Stu Turley, the president and CEO. I'm sorry. Good morning, Irina. Sorry.
Good morning.
I'm supposed to let y'all get a word in edgewise, I know. And also with us right now is Stu Turley, the president and CEO of the Sandstone Group, and the guy that puts these things together for us, and really appreciate it. Stu,
Hey.
how are you today?
hey, it's Monday, but it's a short week.
And
Yay.
there's Tammy.
We
Tammy,
love
how are
Tammy.
you?
Go, Tammy. Go, Tammy.
The great Tammy
Good.
Nemeth.
How are you all doing today?
Has her own website, the Nemeth Report, and I just interrupted her, of course. Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
So this is your day to moderate. Do you want to take it from here? We've done introductions and
Okay.
okay.
So did you explain what we're talking about today?
Well, I didn't. I hadn't gotten to that point yet. I'm too verbose.
Okay. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the Canadians out there of Happy Canada Day. July 1st is the celebration of Confederation. So yay.
Yay.
Barbecues and fireworks, right?
Nice.
So kind of like, yeah. So I think we're at 100 and it was in 1967 or sorry, 1867 that Canada had Confederation. So
157 years.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Getting up there. So given that it's summer, who knew there'd be so many political events and elections happening in summer this year, right? Yeah. So today, our topic is the global political season and its impact on energy realities. We've got the EU elections and the appointments that were just made, the snap French elections, which took everybody by surprise, the UK election, which was also a surprise, and that's coming up on Thursday, I think, July 4th. And of course, we also have the looming American election and the debates that happened last week. So, you know, what are the impacts on energy realities with all of these different things? And I thought maybe we can start with the EU leadership appointments and the results in France last night. Irina, what do you make of the EU appointment of former Portuguese socialist premier Antonio Costa as the chair of the European Council, and Ursula von der Leyen is back as president, and then we have the Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas is the next EU foreign policy chief. And I'm wondering, is Antonio Costa going to be as hyperbolic about climate as his compatriot Antonio Guterres, who is also a former Portuguese head of the Socialist Party?
And also an Antonio. Actually, I didn't pay attention to the appointment of this Antonio, the new guy, sorry. But, well, I wasn't surprised by Ursula's second term. I was disappointed, though. She is under investigation still, as far as I remember. I haven't heard anything about the end of this investigation, but nobody's talking about it, about those COVID vaccines. As for Kaja Kallas, well, information has been circulating on the internet that she's Soros-phobic after her father was a high-ranking functionary in the USSR. This happens a lot in Eastern Europe. You know, the children of the, how should I put it, the elite, the totalitarian elite, are the most vocal opponents of everything related to the USSR, probably in hopes to make everyone forget it. And the woman is crazy. She is clinically insane, that this is not normal. I mean, this level of hate She's not normal, but she fits in with the narrative, and she's pretty much the same as her predecessor, who probably retired on alcoholic grounds. I don't know. He just couldn't take it anymore after, the garden comments and everything. We need to keep fighting the war in the Ukraine to have peace and this sort of thing. So she fits in perfectly. So that wasn't a surprise either. Sorry. I can't be polite, I'm very near to this whole war. And we're sort of a frontline country right now, together with Romania. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to be polite, because the decisions of these people could make us a target, even though I don't really believe it. But it's a hypothetical possibility, which I intensely dislike. Did you ask me about the French elections?
Yeah, so if I can just add in here, this Antonio Costa resigned as head of the Socialist Party because of corruption allegations. So it's another case of failing upwards, right? Just like Mark Rutte, failed Dutch leader.
Yes, we have a new head of NATO. Great guy, so moderate in his opinions and his views.
Is NATO kind of like the UN, one of the most corrupt organizations on the planet, or am I just mistaken?
It is, and do you know that right now Bulgaria is being swept by very, very heavy advertising of NATO? Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Really?
Yeah,
No.
billboards, 20 years in NATO, protecting what's valuable to us or something like this. And I hear people who watch television complaining that there are TV ads about Bulgaria's membership in NATO.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Tammy, can I ask a question? Because last week on the the debate, that was so bad, Trump is really wanting NATO to pay their fair share and not have the U.S. totally pay for everything. I vote the U.S. get out of all wars all around the world and quit poking our nose where it doesn't belong. But what is Europe's thought and the UK's thought about Trump not supporting NATO?
That's a good question. I don't think Trump is saying get rid of NATO, even though NATO really lost its purpose after the fall of the Soviet Union. And, it's kind of been going through the motions of, well, what are we here for? And that kind of thing. And it's been trying to reinvent itself for a long time. But I think having to pay your fair share in a security alliance isn't a bad request. It just seems kind of sensible, and I think the UK will be in trouble because for all of the different things that, let's say Labour does win, as everybody's projecting they're going to win on Thursday, they don't have much of a defense support initiative there. They're spending so much money on climate and all of these other things. It'll be interesting to see where they try to find money to pay for defense. So I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, so Irina, if we could just maybe move to what happened in France last night. What do you think about that?
Well, this again wasn't surprising. But, it reminded me a bit about Brexit. When David Cameron called the referendum, I think he sort of assumed that people will vote Remain, but they didn't. I don't know what Macron was thinking when he called the snap elections, but I doubt he expected this.
Yeah.
So it's the same things happening all over again. But it's a good thing, I think, because I don't believe Marine Le Pen's party is far right. They're just right from the extreme left that the rest of France is.
Right.
Yeah.
But the election is not over. There's one more interesting development this week, however. Hungary just took the EU presidency, and Viktor Orban announced a new alliance, potential alliance in the European Parliament called Patriots for Europe, to form an actual group of MPs. They need MPs from 4 more member states, but basically they are sticking it to the dominant powers in the European Parliament.
Excellent.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have too much weight in decisions, but the fact that such a group is forming, a traditional conservative, if you were far right, of course, they were called far right immediately.
Of course.
Grouping of members of parliament is a positive development to me, as long as they get the support of 4 more member countries.
Yeah, the far right tag just means anyone whose politics are to the right of Fidel Castro. It's a meaningless term at this point because it's so overused. And it's no surprise. It's sad, but it's really no surprise that the left-wing leadership, the globalists who have been in control of the EU, just continue to double down on everything they've been doing, make no acknowledgement of the gains of the conservative right in the recent elections, and just appoint more far left-wing idiots to run the thing, and that's what leftists always do. So it's no surprise. And what's happening in France could be earth-shattering if Le Pen's party does receive a full majority in the second round of the elections. It just would be earth-shaking, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Tammy, there's a video here of that announcement last night. If you want to take a look at it here,
Okay.
And we can turn the sound up if we want. But
yeah, turn the sound on.
Parliamentary elections in France on Sunday, but the final result will depend on days of hard bargaining before the second round of voting next week. Sunday's outcome is a major blow to President Emmanuel Macron, who stunned the nation when he called for snap elections after his party was trounced by the National Rally
Trounced.
in the European Parliament elections earlier this month. In a speech to supporters Sunday night, Le Pen said her party's victory was decisive.
My dear compatriots, democracy has spoken, and the French people have placed the National Rally and its allies on top, and have practically wiped out President Macron's party.
Le Bloc Macroniste.
The results were in line with opinion polls ahead of the election, but provided little clarity on whether Le Pen's anti-immigrant Eurosceptic
the U.S.
party
needs paper
will be
ballots.
able to form a government and coexist with pro-EU Macron after next Sunday's second round.
Isn't it amazing they can count all those ballots within a few hours?
Tough political decisions now lies ahead. In the past, center-right and center-left parties have teamed up to keep the National Rally from power.
Yeah.
But that dynamic is less certain than ever.
Center-right.
No, I
pariah,
disagree.
The far-right National Rally is now closer to power than it has ever been. Le Pen has sought to clean up the image of her party, known for racism and anti-Semitism. Her efforts appear to have worked amid vote.
Throw anything at them, see what sticks. Yeah.
Is that
exactly.
report from MSNBC or CNN, Stu?
I'm not sure where I got the feed. So it was.
I'm kidding. It might as well have been on MSNBC.
I mean, if you looked at the breakdown of the party support, and
Right.
so there's this extreme left-wing group that formed adjacent to Macron's party. If you combine those two percentage of voters together, it's over 50%. So I'm really concerned that, they're talking up Le Pen and all this kind of thing, but the left actually, if they combine, has 50+%. And, then that creates a whole new sort of situation, which is actually very similar to what happened in the last French election, where it seemed like Le Pen was gaining all this ground. Then the left riots and does all this stuff to intimidate people.
Well,
and
they
then
had big
in
riots
the end,
last night too. Yeah.
right.
Well, I
so
hope
then
this will motivate more people to vote for the far left.
Yeah.
Next Sunday.
I know. Yeah.
But it
it's
is a
interesting.
parliamentary election with multiple parties, and so like Labor isn't getting 50% of the polling. in the UK, but Labour's going to win 80% of the seats. So just because, you know, it's this series of individual district
Mhm.
elections in the
Yeah,
parliament.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
So,
So no, go Stu.
why is the left violent? I mean, it just, why can't we all
always
get?
been
I
violent.
hate that
It's always
Rodney.
been so peaceful.
Yeah, I mean,
It's,
if
I
we
mean, the
can't,
Democratic Party created the Ku Klux Klan in the wake of the Civil War to preserve its political powers. That's a fact of history. Democratic Party created Antifa in the wake of Trump winning the 2016 election. That's a fact of history. The Democratic Party in the United States has always been a party of violence, and they consider it just another political tactic. So it's just a fact of history.
wow.
Yeah, and it's ironic and hypocritical where you find people on the left who will say to the people who are more conservative, "Are you going to accept the outcome of the Democratic election?" And and it's like, but they don't accept the outcome of a Democratic election. They throw it up either as
Yeah.
being manipulated, or they put their Antifa goons on the streets in order to intimidate and bully people into just cowering and caving to their demands, which is not good.
Meanwhile,
Yeah,
Jamie
because
Raskin, a
freedom of
Democratic
speech and
congressman,
democracy is also good when it works for our guys. It's
Right.
not good
Right.
when it benefits the other side.
The other
that's
side.
exactly
yeah.
right. Jamie Raskin is a member of Congress from Connecticut, and on Sunday on one of the big news shows, he said that if Trump wins the election in November, but the Republicans do not get a majority in the House of Representatives, he's going to lead a Democratic effort to challenge the results of the election. Period.
Of course.
Wow.
Is there
Well,
going to be an
because, I mean,
investigation?
the election
Yeah,
has
on
to be
what grounds?
certified. The election in the United States has to be certified by the House of Representatives.
Mhm.
And so if the Democrats get a majority, even if Trump wins the election, they're going to refuse to certify the election, which is what they've spent the last 4 years trying to put Trump in prison for doing in 2020. Okay.
But do they not have to have some sound grounds for doing this? You have to have a reason to challenge the results of a presidential election.
If you believe in the rule of law, yes, they do have to have sound grounds. But the Democratic Party only believes in the rule of law when it serves its purposes. Okay. I mean, if that's not
we have
crystal
a
clear to
president.
everyone by now,
I mean,
it's
you have
never going to be.
ex-Speaker Pelosi, and you have all of the Democrats standing up and saying, I don't believe in the Supreme Court until the Supreme Court rules in their favor. We have President Biden standing up against the Supreme Court and waiving and canceling debt that he can't cancel or have the legal authority for student loans. And that is going to add inflation because people like me get to pay for them.
Yeah, the Treasury just prints money to pay off the debt.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sorry I took us off on a tangent there.
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so why don't we segue into the UK election? So on Thursday, we've got the Snap UK election that's going to be happening. And I don't know, David, what's your take on what's going on over here?
Well, I have to tell you, Tammy, and I know you're a resident there. I'm very concerned. I'm very, really almost depressed. I mean, all my family background is from the United Kingdom, and so I've always paid a lot of attention to what's happening there. I understand the voters' anger with the Tories. They've been awful. They've been idiots. They bought into the entire globalist regime coming out of the EU since Boris Johnson became the prime minister, and so they deserve to be spanked, at the election ballot. But the problem is what the voters are about to put in power is infinitely worse.
Yeah.
The Labour Party has always been a socialist / communist party. This Keir Starmer guy, who looks like an accountant, is the guy they're putting up because he puts a mild face on a horrible, horrible political philosophy that's going to do incredible damage to the British people and the UK as a nation once they're put into power. And I think it's inevitable. The Reform Party has had a bit of a surge here in recent weeks, but it's not going to be enough to prevent the outcome. And I'll just close by saying this. It looks like the voters are going to give Labor 70 to 80% of the seats in Parliament. No political party anywhere in the Western world ever gets elected with that kind of majority and does not go about invoking radical reforms, radical policies.
Yeah.
They're going to act on their worst impulses. And so it would be one thing if you're giving them a bare majority, but giving them this overwhelming supermajority is just, you're going to become California real fast. And that's a bad place to be.
Especially what, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the manifesto of the Labor Party and what their energy policies are. I mean, they're so unrealistic. When we talk about energy realities, their platform is like completely not realistic at all.
That's because they're idiots. They sound like idiots, including Keir Starmer. But wow. I agree with David that it's going to get very, very bad very quickly, because they do not realize what they're saying, what they're planning, what they're promising is unrealistic and often impossible. They're just going to try and act on it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all this, Tammy? Living there and all?
I don't know. I think it's interesting because I'm on one of these neighborhood little discussion lists called Nextdoor, and somebody was trying to attack the Reform Party. And normally the people who reply on this neighborhood thing are very left-wing. And I was surprised at how many people stood up for reform. It was a bit shocking, actually. So I'm not sure. And I know that the mainstream media here in the UK has been trying to tar and feather the Reform Party, saying they're racist and all this kind of thing. And then there's allegations that Channel 4 hired an actor to pretend to be like a candidate or something, and then did this whole segment on him. So now they're challenging Channel 4 for election interference. And but I mean the election's on Thursday, so it doesn't matter, right? They throw the smear out, and by the time it gets addressed, it's over. So, and with respect to energy, I really am concerned. We live in an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's one of these designations, but part of their energy platform is to bypass all of the local regulations for planning, so that they can put up windmills and solar arrays all over the place, cover the hills with them, take over farmland, which is, people here have worked really hard to preserve nature and these areas of natural beauty. And they're going to paper it over with windmills and solar panels.
Yeah, what happens to areas of outstanding natural beauty? Because remember in Clarkson's farm, the latest season, the second season, this local council rejected his application for a restaurant on the grounds that it would compromise this designation. So you can't have a restaurant on your own farm without covering the hills and the fields in solar panels. So what happens?
They're going to change those rules so that the counties can't pull back. Right. Yeah. Supposedly. Stu, what do you think? It is.
I think what we're seeing is this political discussion of the Great Awakening is not here yet. People kind of have one eye open. And as the Great Awakening starts happening, the elites, the Democrats, the left are going to start getting more violent. And I think that the Supreme Court case that David's got on his list is so important for the United States, of 80 years of the deep state having controls, and now allows folks to happen. So David has a lot to say on this. I think that we are about to see in the next 6 months more violence than the world has seen in decades and a long time, because those in power do not want to lose it. Personal opinion.
But they're going to.
Eventually, yes, they are going to, and it's inevitable. And
Holding on to their life. Yeah.
And I think it's going to be
Exactly.
global. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because they're globalists.
yeah,
So, okay, let's now chat about the debacle of the debate.
The debacle.
So, Irina, debacle. Irina, from a European perspective, what did you make of
yeah.
the car crash?
I don't think I can speak from a European perspective. I can only speak from a personal perspective, which includes the experience of 30 plus years of idiotic politicians. I mean, we've had everything. We've had mumblers, we've had stupid people, we've had corrupt people. We never got this bad. I'm sorry, guys. It's really.
It's bad.
Oh, I didn't watch the whole debate. No, I couldn't do this to myself. But
We have a 1 minute of an ad that Trump has out now. A 1 minute. If you want to stomach through it, it is pathetic. I think we could probably get through 10 seconds of it. Tammy, if you want to,
painful.
it is so embarrassing. I want to go throw up.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person.
I have to hand it to
what
Trump.
I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare, we're trying to provide housing for Black Americans. The impact on the choice, the idea that they're gonna. I'm proposing that everybody they pay. The millionaires pay 1%. So no one after I've not raised the cost of Social Security for anybody. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And wants to get away with get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be
Why
able
would
to
anyone
negotiate
do
drug
this
prices
for
with big
person?
pharma companies. When I'm
It's elder
fix the
abuse.
tax system, for example.
I mean, it
we have
is.
1,000 trillionaires.
It is.
I mean,
He had been coached for a week. He had the questions in advance and he couldn't swing it because, of course, he wouldn't be able to. You know, this is actually outrageous elder abuse.
His wife should be run out of town. And the entire media, the United States mainstream media, is just as bad. And every rufflehead that stood up there and said everything from Jean-Pierre, his press secretary, saying they can't keep up with him, and our security Mayorkas, that man should be tried for treason and saying that he is brilliant and can't keep up with him and he's on his decisions. All of them have been lying.
It's obvious he's not sane.
It was obvious in 2020, to be honest.
Yes.
I started writing about it in 2019, the day he announced his candidacy. It was the first time I wrote about it. It's been an open secret in Washington since about 2014 that he was having dementia issues. And nobody wanted to talk about it because he was, he was about to go into retirement. And so he gets to 2019, announces his candidacy, and it's 5 years more advanced, and it becomes obvious as soon as he makes the speech, right? And it's been obvious ever since, but Stu's right. Everyone in our news media has been completely in the tank for him, covering for him, lying about his condition, All of his staff has been lying about his condition, and the public finally got to see it live on
The public has been seeing it
right.
every time he appears on camera. What I'm not sure I could understand, I could comprehend, is whether all these people responsible for keeping him out there on stage like a puppet, did they really believe that people would not believe their own eyes and ears, but would rather believe what they were being told?
Yes,
Yes.
they absolutely believe, and they're
Yes.
going right back to the same narrative this morning here in the United States. The media done a complete about face again and gone right back to the same narrative this morning. So
And
yes, they're going to try to keep this crap up.
So
And
I
the
think
sca-
people are idiots, basically.
The scary question is, who's running the outfit? That man is not making a decision. I believe, was it
Everyone around him.
Yeah, was it Woodrow Wilson? I believe in his last 18 months, he had his wife meet everyone at the door. The cabinet was no longer able to even have anything, and so he
Right.
actually did not
wife
run.
ran the
He had a
country.
stroke, and he was in his bed. I think that there's a joke around that Woodrow Wilson was dead, and she was running the place, and then she wrote a book about it. This is very sad because we have another extension of Obama people, the deep state, and it is not the president.
Yeah, there's a reason why Barack Obama didn't leave Washington, D.C. when he left office. Okay. And, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious at this point. I think everyone needs to acknowledge who's really been running this administration. It's been Obama's third term, and Susan Rice is one of the several Obama people with senior advisory positions in the White House itself. That's who's running the country and has been running the country. And, Joe Biden's not capable of tying his shoelaces, folks. I mean, they even dictate to him what kind of shoes he wears. Okay. And have been. And so it's
one thing to
bad.
have a Pope wave. It's another to have to change your pants in front of the Pope. That's bad.
So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking that, this level of deception, and it's a deception that's across the entire sort of, however you wish to define it, deep state or whatever, through the media, through all of the party apparatus and whatnot. Is that not a symbol of, or a symptom, whatever, of authoritarianism and totalitarianism?
Oh, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not just in the United States. I mean, this is true across Europe too, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, and Canada, obviously, and Australia, and New Zealand. It's across the Western world. Brazil, it's no different in Brazil, as our former colleague Armando Cavana, I think, understood. And so it's, this is I mean, we can talk about voting all we want, but everyone has to understand too that their frenzy to preserve their power only increases the urge to try to fix elections, okay, and try to rig the outcomes. And so, I mean, we have to be vigilant about that as well.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I didn't watch the whole debate. Did they talk about energy at all? Or was it just rambling nonsense from Biden?
There was a question about climate change, of course, that was asked by Dana Bash, the lady moderator. And of course, it was directed to Donald Trump, and it was very slanted and biased, of course, because she's with CNN. It had to be. And Trump didn't even address it at first. He just bridged right over to talking about the open borders, which is what he should have done. And then she kept asking him, and he said something about it, but I don't even remember what.
Drill, baby, drill was his answer.
Well,
and under Trump, I believe oil was around $42, and
on average,
on average, and we have had a 35% increase in energy in the U.S. since Biden has taken office. So it's a combination
Energy prices, right?
energy
costs,
prices, yes.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at how that impacts inflation and everything else, it's people are struggling.
But it's weird because, Democrats and pro-Democrat media, as in the media, keep reminding us that, what do you want? Oil and gas production under Biden surged to new records, which is true. So how come energy is more
Yeah.
expensive?
But
because prices are surged. Yeah. I mean,
here's where I
that's why,
think we're about to get bit on that. And that is, it may have surged, but that's because of a machine that takes a while as you have CapEx go into oil and gas drilling. It's like a python. It rolls around for quite a while. We are down in the U.S. Huge rigs. We lost another 7 rigs last week. So that is a trailing effect of time, and everything else. And so you have the world is going on. We're going to see. Did I just sound like Biden? Holy smokes! I need to go shoot myself in the foot. No, what you're going to see is the lack of investment. I just read an article where the UK is also going to be hampering, and the International Monetary Fund, which scolded the U.S. last week for its monetary policies. Oh my goodness, you can't buy this kind of entertainment.
Yeah.
But the lack of investment is going to cause higher oil prices here very soon.
Which is what OPEC and Exxon and various other groups have been saying.
Yep.
It's like we need more CapEx investment. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They keep warning about it. Nobody's listening.
And BlackRock, Larry Fink, is under attack right now because his ESG stance, he's now saying, oh, it's okay to invest in oil and gas. And he's now investing in oil and gas. So it's kind of funny.
Well, I think that's related to that congressional committee and that report that came out a couple of weeks ago. And the report actually said, we think this is why BlackRock and these other groups pulled out of Climate Action 100 or whatever in order to, and they're changing their tune to make it seem like, oh, no, we're not against oil and gas.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. They're all for profits, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's like those new ETFs that BlackRock brought out. And then if you drill down into what the actual assets are in those ETFs, you've got Shell and Exxon and some other ones in these supposedly ESG.
Really? The climate transition funds?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were supposed to be clean energy companies.
It's how they're ranked on CDP, right? So if you're ranked as a B or whatever, then your overall score, you have a transition plan and you're working towards that plan, the end of that plan, and therefore you can be bundled in with these ETFs. And so then there's the accusation of greenwashing. Well, that has nothing to do with whatever standards and data and all this kinds of stuff. It has to do with a company like BlackRock bundling these things.
Yeah.
So having more data, that doesn't really solve the problem. But
we're going to see hydrogen and natural gas power really at the forefront of this for quite a while. And that is the natural gas power plants coming in that are hydrogen ready so that they can invest in it. And they're going to call it part of their green plan. We are already seeing it. So I know
doing that in Germany.
Yep. Oh, we're at the forefront. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess Germany is getting EU money, and it's creating a lot of controversy to build another LNG terminal or something on the coast. And the Greens are all mad, saying that Germany shouldn't be getting EU transition money to build an LNG terminal.
Of course it shouldn't.
Of course. But I think that as part of the EU taxonomy, natural gas is considered light green or brownish or something. I don't know.
I mean, they affirmatively enacted that policy last year, about this time last year.
Yeah. So I wanted to make one last point, and that is during the UK debates, climate change, net zero, and energy were not raised at all. Not one question.
Unbelievable.
Because they
Wow.
agree on all of these issues, I suppose.
Yes.
We've discussed
They
this
don't
before.
want-
They don't really have differences. on
There's no
the-
differences, but they don't want to raise awareness amongst the public that there could be a party that is different,
Right.
which is reform.
Of
Right?
course they
Said they
wouldn't.
would scrap
To,
net
to,
zero.
to all my fellow Americans, as much as you hate our news media here in the United States, and you should, you don't hate them nearly as much as you should, you would be infinitely more disgusted with the news media in Great Britain and in Australia and other
Wow.
parts of the Western world.
Yeah.
You can't imagine how awful the BBC is and the monopoly it has on the media.
I
Yeah,
think
very
that's
great
why
book.
my podcast is doing so well, is because you can take a Oklahoma State graduate, add a Texas accent to him, but speak the truth, and people want to hear you. Go figure that out. I never
Go
dreamed.
figure. How
Go
about that?
figure. So should we move on to the headlines for today?
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. This is going to be the fun part.
Woohoo. Where is that one? Is that this?
There you go.
Oh, these are mine. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the story about Denmark's world's first carbon tax on cattle and agriculture.
Wow.
It's appalling. And it's not going to kick in until 2030, apparently. And then they're saying, oh, whatever we collect in the tax, we're going to give back to farmers. And like, then
Sure.
why collect
Why
it?
are you collecting it?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, we're going to give it back so they can transition and so on. Well, what does that mean exactly? That you're going to be culling, herds or something? I'm not sure. But, Danish pork is world renowned, and
Yeah.
the pigs as well are going to be facing this carbon tax. So it's just another element. So they're going after energy first, and food is the next thing, right? And it's just appalling that they would
Yeah.
do such a thing.
It is. But there's time until 2030. Maybe there will be a swing of the political pendulum in Denmark too.
Hopefully, because I mean, if people realize just how much their food is going to increase, the cost of it, I think maybe that will be that seems to be what affects people when it hits their wallet, when it hits their
Yeah.
pocketbook, and it becomes really
Amazing.
expensive, and
Yeah.
then they start to
And
care.
sooner or later it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's that one. Irina.
Oh, you just had one? Okay. That second, I'll start with the private clients return to ESG funds with new ways to tackle returns. Just look at the headline. New ways to tackle returns.
Don't worry about profits. Don't worry about returns on investment.
I never thought that returns on investments are something to be tackled.
Yeah.
You tackle challenges, problems, this sort of thing. But from what I gather from this story is that people are starting, allegedly, to return to ESG funds with more realistic expectations, which I
my God.
translate as, we know it's not going to make any money anytime soon, but eventually it might. So let's be here. Or they're just being lied to by managers talking their book, and this is why they're returning. But this is the best story I've read in, I don't know, in a month at least. We've been accidentally cooling the planet, and it's about to stop. So essentially, the use of oil, gas, and coal has been heating up the planet with CO2, but at the same time, sulfur emissions from the burning of these hydrocarbons has been neutralizing the effect of CO2. So basically, this would mean we had some sort of balance between heating and cooling, simultaneous heating and cooling. Who knew hydrocarbons could do this? But because we've done such a great job, and it is a great job, and ironically, in cutting sulfur emissions, which are poisonous. It
A
is
real
pollutant.
pollutant. Yes.
Yeah, and we've been cutting these. So
Unbelievable. Oh no. Irina
Uh-oh.
froze.
Oh, I'm going to get a screenshot of this.
Irina froze with her eyes closed.
Oh, no.
How funny.
Oh no.
Well, what's interesting is that those particulates that Irene is talking about from that article are primarily due to shipping. And so these particulates go in and they reflect the sun, and it makes it has a cooling effect.
Yeah.
And so the solution is to fly airplanes around and put particulates into the clouds and
Oh, my
atmosphere like
God.
they did offshore California to make up for the shipping that used to do something similar.
Did you send the article around about where they're going to be putting ice? They were actually putting the ice around in there. That was a funny story. I don't remember where I saw that. That was
chemtrails
I
are real, folks. Chemtrails are a real thing.
Yep.
Okay, so until Irina comes back, David, do you want to talk about your
Yeah,
here?
so I'll be quick. The one about the AC units to the Paris Olympics, the United States joined a stream of other countries who are gonna ship hundreds of room air conditioning units and window units over to Paris to keep their athletes cool during the Paris Olympics. Paris had hoped that everyone would comply with a brilliant plan, genius plan, to do without air conditioning while the athletes were there at Paris, and rely instead on a geothermal cooling system that apparently is widespread across that city or beneath that city. But our athletes, our Olympics committee here in the United States, which never misses an opportunity to virtue signal about global warming and climate change, suddenly decided that, well, if it's going to be 78 degrees in those rooms, which is all the geothermal system can do, well, that's just too hot for our athletes to stand. Our young, highly conditioned athletes can't possibly sleep in 78 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So we have to send AC units with them to Paris. That's just the height of, it's just unbelievably hypocritical. I'm so sick of those people.
Canada's doing the same thing.
Yeah, Canada's doing it. Half the countries in the EU are doing it. One African country, I forget which one, Botswana or Nigeria, said unfortunately they wouldn't be able to do it because they can't afford the cost of the AC unit. So I'm just waiting for BlackRock or somebody to step up to the plate and agree to fund the AC units for countries that can't afford it.
But David, how are they going to power it since the Olympic Village is supposedly with solar?
Yes, I'm anxious to see the blackouts taking place at the Olympic Village while the Olympics are ongoing. That will be fun. But the big story I've got is the Chevron deference, which has been the facilitating legal doctrine that has led to the exponential growth of the administrative state in the United States, and enabled the Obama administration and Biden administration to, develop and put into place this climate change agenda that they've put in place, was overturned by the Supreme Court Friday, as it was always destined to be overturned because it's bad case law. Eventually, you were going to get a Supreme Court that would overturn it. And now that puts in jeopardy the entire climate change agenda in the United States, including the 2007 Massachusetts v. EPA decision, which authorized the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate carbon dioxide as a pollutant. Plant food is a pollutant as defined in U.S. law now, thanks to the Chevron deference. With that gone, that case will eventually be overturned too, because it's bad case law completely outside the Constitution and the scope and scale of the Clean Air Act. And so this entire agenda that's been put in place over the last dozen years by these Democrat presidencies is now in great jeopardy. It'll take years to get rid of it all, but it's all going to get unwound.
Wow. That's huge.
David, I want to ask your opinion on this. And Tammy, is that as I had mentioned earlier, is that as the elites and the Democrats potentially lose power, that they do more violent things. And we're already seeing like Maxine Waters calling for more violence, and you're seeing a lot of that stuff. There's also a call for packing the court. And
Oh, yeah.
I believe that this decision may be a flagship for them to try to retain power and pack
Yeah,
the
they're
court.
not going to be able to do that, though. They're not going to have the majorities necessary to do that. They'd have to have 61 votes in the Senate, and that's not going to happen. So,
We
they
hope.
can talk about it all they want to. They're not going to be able to get it done.
My concern is with the potential litigation coming afterwards, and if it goes through federal courts or more regional courts or something, district courts, that if you get activist judges, then this drags things out even longer, right?
Right.
And that you'll have activists who will be more than willing, with all of their foundation funding, in order to litigate this to the right judge.
Oh, of
Tim,
course. Yes.
You brought up
Absolutely.
the fantastic point, and this all boils it down to where it needs to be. And this becomes into local elections matter even more now. And we need to eliminate the Soros impacted type folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Stu,
A couple things here. I absolutely love this one from this this group. Europe is not ready for Trump.
Is that in The Economist? Is that where that's from?
It is from let's
It
see
looks
here,
like
the
The
foreignpolicy.com. They've got a great
Okay.
feed.
All right.
foreign policy.
Yeah, they are good. I mean, they got good material. But Trump, I think is love him, hate him. There are things about him I'm not real thrilled about, but I think he is the only one that's going to stand up for against rhinos and anybody else. Tammy, what is your thought?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Europe is such a socialist mess. It really doesn't matter which country you go to. It seems to be the administrative state in Europe is dominated by the socialists. I mean, they've gone so far left. Like David had said earlier, that you have a just a normal conservative opinion and you're labeled as far right, because they've gone so far left that if you're just kind of in the middle, you're super right compared to the far left. So I don't know. Europe isn't ready. I don't think it'll be no different than what it was in 2016, to be honest.
Right.
Wow. Well,
Yeah. Did Europe
with socialism-
die because Trump was president for 4 years? I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Well,
Although,
I think,
with respect to the Green Deal now, and
Mhm.
they've thrown all this money into that apparatus. And then if you have a super competitive United States that isn't on that bandwagon, then that creates a huge economic risk for Europe.
Right.
And it's, the potential for even more companies pulling up stakes and moving to the US or whatever. I mean, with all of this new administrative burden with the sustainability standards that the EU has brought in, it could be a problem.
Yep.
Oh, you bet. And with that's what Lord Radcliffe, you brought up exactly what he was talking about, about how bad it's going to be for Europe. If you don't
Hey,
mind.
Stu, Tom Mumford has a good question here. Wouldn't that have to be a constitutional amendment to pack the court? No, because the number of justices on the Supreme Court is not defined in the Constitution, and it has varied over the years. It could be done by an act of Congress.
So
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, this other one, the far right, I put that in there just because we were talking about this. I thought that was an excellent stance. We've already covered that one. But China surpasses Europe in per capita energy consumption. And there's a couple reasons for this, and that is because the deindustrialization of Europe, because of the green policies, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but when you take a look at that, so as the manufacturing has left and gone to China, so is the pollution. Pollution is up in China, but yet their per capita is up. So when you take a look at the statistics on this, I thought that this was very interesting. This is from the IEA. We should not ignore the energy and emissions that Europeans have effectively exported to Chinese manufacturer. Energy Institute Chief Executive Officer Nick Wyeth recently told Bloomberg, if a decline in energy consumption and emissions in Europe simply boosts carbon output elsewhere, policies to tackle global climate change aren't working. I couldn't agree more. So policies around energy and deindustrialization have consequences.
Yes, they
Yeah.
do. Somebody in
Well,
one of the European politicians actually made that point, Tammy, a couple of weeks ago, right? That Britain's not really reducing emissions with these policies; it's just transferring them to other countries, right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
forget.
And now,
That might have been Nigel Farage.
yeah, could be. But they're also doubling down on interconnections, right? So
Yeah.
instead of the UK producing its own energy, it's going to rely on other European countries for that energy.
Yeah.
At least that's the proposal. And there were 7 interconnectors proposed, and the regulator only allowed 1 of them, which was interesting. And I wonder if they'll be asked to reconsider once the election happens on Thursday.
So
That was the one to Germany. Is that correct? If I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Why?
Irina has a wonderful piece at her Substack. By the way, her laptop died. She just sent an email out.
Oh, okay.
But she has a great piece on her Substack, folks. Go read it. It's about the 2,485-mile power line that investors want to spend $24 billion to move solar-powered electricity from the Sahara Desert. I forget which country it's in, to England. Okay.
And
2,400
They're doing
miles.
that again.
Yeah.
and Tammy, I want to give you a shout out for the studies and the notes that you had put out there. I think we need to
Oh, yeah.
study the. If I was identified as a rich person, I would love to personally fund all of those studies that you had talked about. We need to know a study on the wind, and like Captain Kelly is talking about the pilot whales. We need to save the planet and not have pollution. I mean,
Yeah.
even Arnold Schwarzenegger is talking about it being pollution and not, fossil versus that. It's about let's get rid of pollution, not net zero.
Right. And what I think is concerning is that there's all of these attribution studies, and I put attribution in scare quotes, that are designed specifically to accuse oil and gas companies of every weather event that's going on. And that is designed for future litigation to sue the oil companies for damages. And unfortunately, there aren't any other studies taking place right now because you can't get funding for them.
Right.
That would demonstrate, there's other variables there besides the use of oil and gas that changes weather. And to even say that using oil and gas changes weather, I think is just absurd. But that's where we're at, where that absurdity and all the things that David points out every week, every day almost, is informing these decisions that are coming and will be coming.
Boy, oh boy. What
Great
a
job.
world.
So
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. Yeah.
So, Tammy, the NemethReport.com, you also have a podcast.
Yep.
All right. And
Awesome.
David is blackman.substack.com. And Irina,
And Stu?
Irina is irinaslav.substack.com. That all of those you must go follow.
And Stu at energynewsbeat.co.
There we
Which
go.
is awesome.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
y'all. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Happy